Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to the Netherlands once again, and we're going to have a look at yet another of the beers that I brought back with me from my recent trip down there. For this review, we will go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before, but I have to say this beer strikes me as being perhaps the most quirky one that I brought back with me from this trip, so I'm really curious to see how it turns out. As I've told you in previous Dutch reviews, there's a very strong beer scene down there and a very high standard of beer, so it's always nice to introduce new Dutch breweries on the channel and try things that are a little bit different. So I hope that you guys watching down there are enjoying my take on these Dutch beers. So let's see how we get on with this one then. So for this review, we are going to go to a little place called Ra, which is in Gelderland, kind of in the central eastern part of the Netherlands, if we can call it that, about halfway up the country and close to the eastern border. I guess that describes it a bit better. But for this review, we are going to have a look at my first beer from Bronckhorster Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Terra Incognita. It comes in at 11% ABV. It's the 2020 vintage as well. And this one is described as a herb and spice beer. If you look at the side of the bottle here, it has a really impressive adjunct list, which we'll come to a little bit later, and also a really interesting hop bill as well. And it's also worth noting that this beer is listed as an English style barley wine on Untappd too. So I have to say I'm just really curious to see how this beer turns out. But fingers crossed it's an interesting beer, fingers crossed it's as good as the other Dutch things we've had before, and like I said, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one. So yeah, let's crack on. Since it's a Dutch beer as well, a massive shout out and thank you to the guys at the Dutch Beer Collective. This beer was a gift from them during my trip to the Netherlands. I'm not sure exactly who picked this one out, but we thank them all anyway, because they've picked me out some really awesome stuff to do as a kind of Dutch mini-series here on the channel. So the four guys at the Dutch Beer Collective are Remy Den Dupe, who is Beer Geek Holland, the original Dutch beer tuber. We've got my very good friend and lover Thomas Hoendam, who is Thomas Opent. We have the Black IPA Slag, Herben Caspers, Dutch Beer Geek, and we also have Douglas Hesselmans, who is Beers with Douglas, the newest edition and the most gangster of them all. But lovely guys, they do some really interesting reviews, and they're the ones who will keep you up to date with the Dutch beer scene. All of them do quite a few reviews in English as well, so that means that you guys watching outside of the Netherlands can enjoy some of their things as well. But check out the links to the Facebook and the Instagram pages of the Dutch Beer Collective, and from there you'll find access to all four of their channels. Go and give them a subscribe, check out some of their videos and show them some love. Great guys, and I'm sure you'll see them feature on my channel again at some point fairly soon. But yeah, let's crack on with the review then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Bronckhorster Brewing Company. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Dutch beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to quite regularly at the moment because I still have a fairly decent supply of Dutch beer, and I'm sure we'll add to that again once that supply runs out as well. But yeah, as always, get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. But anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Bronckhorster Brewing Company. And I do apologise in advance for any bad Dutch pronunciations or any dates that might be a little bit wrong in this one, because this was a little bit hard to piece together actually. But yeah, Bronckhorster Brewing Company then, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Ra, which is the municipality of Bronckhorst, hence the name Bronckhorster, which is to the northeast of Arnhem in Gelderland, which is in the kind of central eastern part of the Netherlands, about halfway up the eastern border and right in the centre of the country. But yeah, the brewery itself was founded back in 2005, and it originally operated under the name Brouwerij Rodenburg until about 2016. That's the first thing to remember about this brewery. But the main man behind the company is Steve Camage, who's originally from Richmond in Yorkshire in England, in the kind of middle part of England, I guess we could say. But he actually came to the Netherlands back in 1980 as a house painter, but he was also an avid home brewer, and later he would turn this home brewing hobby into his full-time profession. But he married Yvonne, and together they had a son, Ramon, who now has children of his own, and the company apparently is run as a sort of family business, which is pretty cool. But he obtained his brewing certificate at Brew Lab in Sunderland in the northeast of England, and initially he was brewing the Rodenburg beers as a gypsy contract brewer at Brouwerij de Molen in Bodegraven out to the east of Leiden. A bit further south. He was brewing there until about 2008. A little bit prior to that though, in 2002, he sold his painting business and also his house in Steenderen to buy a hamlet in Ra. And part of this little farm is actually a 550 square metre barn, which was later converted into a brewery and bar after extensive renovations. So they bought 2 1,000 litre copper brewing kettles from Germany and 6 stainless steel boilers from Japan for the brewing, and they also have a lovely oak bar in there as well from which you can taste the beers. But this facility opened up in about 2010, so there was a bit of a kind of lull, if you like, in the production from what I understand, but they came back strong, of course. And these days they're also barrel aging a number of their different beers as well, and this beer is a barrel aged one. I forgot to mention that at the start of the video. But in 2017 they also had to expand the brewery a little bit because they weren't brewing enough beer to meet the demand, of course, and I think it also gave them a little bit of space for the barrel aging program too. But they built a separate tap room right next to the brewery. The current head brewer is Berend Drent. I believe that Steve was brewing until about 2016 or so, and then Berend was brought in. But they apparently brew somewhere in the region of 50,000 litres of beer per year, so they are still quite a small brewery from what I understand. But that figure may well be out of date. I got that from beernet.nl, so it might have been that might be a few years out of date. I'm not quite sure on that. But as of April 2021, when I'm reviewing this beer for you, they've produced around 27 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about this brewery for the brewery history section. If you want to learn more though, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, incidentally, if you are interested in learning about the different breweries and stuff in the Netherlands, there's 2 very good sources, beernet.nl, and there's also it's either Brouwerij or beerculture.nl as well. That's a very good resource, and the information for this video was pulled from the pages for this brewery on both of those websites, so just so you know where the information comes from. But yeah, let's crack on and actually have a taste of this beer then. Very curious about this one, and if you want to learn more about the brewery, as I say, check out the website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram. That'll give you all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, as you can see with this one, it's got some really nice kind of classic style artwork on this. This one is a 375ml bottle, incidentally, plain black bottle cap on this one. I wonder if the reason that they got me this one, that the Dutch guys gave me this, was because of the symbol, because look at that. That's very, very similar to a certain lion rampant that has been the symbol of the Scottish royal family for a long time, and my channel symbol since about, what, 2015, something like that. But yeah, it looks very, very cool, I have to say. But yeah, that was one of the things that I was going to say about this beer too. So to list the different adjuncts in this one, as I said earlier, it's an 11% herb and spice beer, according to what Bronckhorster say. But the kruiden, or spices, as that would be in English, kubi pepper, which I have no idea what that is exactly, but there's hibiscus, coriander, tonka beans, dried black lemon, apparently, and then also paradise seed, which I'm not sure. I think I've had that in a beer before, and it was a sort of aniseedy kind of thing, if I remember rightly. So really curious to see how it turns out in this regard. But the hops in this one are Rakau, Tolar, Dragon and Sats. So the one that I couldn't find any information on was Tolar, because I searched it and there was nothing. That was the one that I hadn't heard of before. But Rakau, of course, is a New Zealand top. It gives you lots of tropical fruit notes. Usually that comes in somewhere between about 6 and 10% alpha acid. Most of the things I've seen have said it's 8. But I have had Rakau quite a few times before. Dragon, this is a Slovenian hop, sometimes known as Styrian Dragon, and that's a really interesting one. It gives you a lot of kind of berryish notes, a sort of lemony citrus and a kind of berryish quality actually, and I think that comes in around 8% alpha acid as well actually. And then Sats is a classic Czech hop, very similar to the German noble hops, the Hallertau Tettnangers, about 5% alpha acid, but just a wee bit more spicy in my experience. So yeah, hop bill in this one is quite interesting. No idea what to expect from Tolar. I'm guessing that might be, by the sounds of the name, it sounds kind of, it does actually sound quite Czech actually, but then it could be Slovenian again. So yeah, it's from somewhere in that kind of Austrian, that kind of Czech Austrian kind of North Balkan region. It's from somewhere down there, just looking by the name. But yeah, there was no information on that hop actually. So yeah, it looks pretty cool. Really interesting beer. This one, green bottle of course as well. But let's get this guy out and see how we get on with the tasting then. I'm very, very curious about this one. Let's go for it. So, tonka beans, hibiscus, you know, paradise seed and whatever else. So yeah, let's see how we get on. Certainly looks like a barley wine on the pour anyway. So we'll see. It's not often that you come across beers that are described specifically as herb and spice beers by the brewery. Usually they're described as, you know, something else like winter warmer or whatever. But yeah, as you can see, the head on that has disappeared very, very quickly. But yeah, an 11%er, so that's not madly surprising. Let me just check that this is lined up so that my OCD is happy. And there we go. So the head disappeared, but you could see that it was about a quarter finger of a kind of frothy, quite bright beige colour actually. But yeah, there's nothing left, absolutely nothing left on that. Very, very clear. But yeah, it certainly looks like a really nice beer, this one. As you can see, it's poured. It's actually a very lovely kind of ruby colour. It looks a bit like an imperial red or something like this. But yeah, well, a barley wine I guess would be the other thing we could say about it too. So yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But I mean, overall, it does look pretty nice actually. So yeah, remember the colour of your beer is dependent on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use, and two, the length of your wort boil. If this beer is a barley wine, you know it's going to undergo a wort boil of about 4 hours or something like that, potentially 5 or 6 hours. And the more you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But it is dependent in the first instance on what malts it is that you use. Barrel aging and adjuncts can also have an effect on this one, and you know, maybe some of the colour out of this beer is due to what barrel it's been aged in. I think it might say on the side exactly what type of barrel it was aged in, but yeah, that will affect the colour of the beer a little bit. The adjuncts in this one, I'm not 100% sure, but they also have the potential, I guess, to affect the colour of the beer. But like I say, lovely kind of ruby. Yeah, I think it's fair to say this beer is a really nice ruby. You can see the little viewfinder on the glass there. Very nice. But yeah, in terms of its appearance, I don't know if we can really say this was expected or unexpected, because in honesty we didn't really know what this beer is. But if Untappd is to be believed and it's a barley wine, then it's certainly not out of the regions of possibility for that, or the realms of possibility I should say. My English is getting terrible these days because I'm focusing on Swedish a lot more. But yeah, certainly looks the part. So let's have a closer look at the aroma of this one then and just see how we get on. No idea what to expect from this. Oh, right. I'm just going to say straight away, this beer does not smell good. Yeah, but you get beers like this where sometimes they can just smell really weird, but then they taste very nice. But it actually, on the first smell, it actually smelled a little bit like, it reminded me of, I remember there was, when I was doing my chemistry, there was this chemical in the lab, butanoic acid, and it stank like BO and sweat and everything like that. And the wee first whiff I got of this beer really reminded me of that, which is quite strange. But you know, when you sugar it up a little bit, you start to get a few more things out of it. But it's really strange that the aroma in this beer is very, very weird. But then when it's got as many adjuncts in it as it does, I'm not really surprised. Yeah. So it's quite interesting, this one. Let's see if we can tell what barrel it's just in. But no, it actually doesn't really, I don't think it just, I don't think it says. It just said stuff here. It's weird, because having studied Swedish quite a bit now, I can actually understand a fair little bit of Dutch, so an onbekend, an unfamiliar beer terrain. Yeah, you can pick up things like this, but I don't think it actually says. It just says like it should be a special moment on the palate and things like that, and the goodness comes basically. So yeah, it's talking about it's basically an S that's it's been aged in vats over a long time. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly. It doesn't say what kind of barrels this one's been aged in. So yeah, I'm not sure if that kind of strange aroma that it has could be down to the barrel aging, or the the barrel aging or exactly what. But yeah, let's try and look at this aroma then. So what I would say about this beer is you can smell a little bit of a sort of brown sugary element underneath it. You can smell a little bit of a kind of sort of molassesy, kind of treacly molasses sort of thing in there. There is definitely a sort of oily caramelly note to the beer as well. You can smell those brown sugars underneath, absolutely. There is one or two kind of, or there are one or two I should say, kind of woody elements at the bottom of the beer as well. You can definitely smell some of the booziness on this one. So it does have a wee bit of that kind of barley wine sort of vibe to it. But yeah, it really has though, with all these kind of herbs and spice and things. It really, the sort of sweaty kind of aroma that I was getting of it seems to be kind of, seems to sort of be kind of going out of it. So I guess it's maybe in the same way as you get, like, you can sometimes get a sort of vinegary note from some of these sour beers actually when you first open them up. But this is a really, really weird aroma. But yeah, you can definitely smell a sort of planty kind of, you can definitely get that sort of planty, herbally, woody kind of thing out of this one. And we've had this in a few sort of berry-based sour beers and things like that before as well. So I think it's the hibiscus. I mean, hibiscus, from what I remember, gives you a really sort of woody kind of note. So you can definitely get a bit of that in there. Tonka beans tend to give you a little bit of a kind of vanilla element from what I remember. But you can definitely smell that sort of fibrous-y, proteiny sort of thing from this beer a little bit as well. So this one, it does take a little bit of time to open up. But yeah, the more that I smell of it, the more that kind of almost sweaty aroma that I was talking about kind of starts to fade away. But yeah, I do get a bit of woodiness in the base of this one. You can smell a little bit of that kind of fibrousy sort of note, and there's a wee touch of vanilla coming out there as well, which I'm guessing is the tonka beans. So yeah, there's a wee bit that I don't really, the paradise seed that's coming out of this one, I don't really get. I remember paradise seed being a little bit sort of aniseedy, but I don't really pick out that in this one. Let's see what else we've got in this. Coriander, I can see that actually. I definitely can see the coriander, but I don't think the coriander is quite as prominent as the hibiscus is, or the tonka beans definitely. The lemon I don't get too much of either. So I'm wondering if it's that, in terms of the kind of almost sweaty type thing that you get from this beer, I wonder if that could be the kubi pepper or the paradise seed. So I'm really not sure about that in honesty. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure what to make of this aroma actually. It really is just pretty unusual, I have to say. So yeah, it's just such a quirky aroma that you get out of this beer, absolutely. But yeah, the more you sugar it up, the more you get these kind of fibrousy notes out of it. You get the tonka bean. I can get the coriander as well. I can sort of see that. I can definitely get a little bit of the kind of vanilla from the tonka beans too. So there is a really quirky kind of thing going on about this beer. I think this is one where we're going to pick up a bit more in the flavour than we are in the aroma, to be honest with you. You do get one or two elements of hoppy quality out of the beer. There's a little bit of earthiness, a little bit of grassiness, and maybe a wee touch of floral character. But when it's barrel aged, then that's obviously going to drop out a bit over time. And I've had this beer sitting in the fridge for maybe, I think it's been in the fridge for about 6 months now. But an 11%er, you're not going to worry about that too much actually. But yeah, this one's a very, very quirky aroma, and I'm struggling to pick things out of it. So I think it's best that we just actually taste this one now and see how we get on. So take a bit of time to ponder over that aroma. It's a really strange thing that you get out of this beer at the start, but let's just go for it and see how we get on with this one. So this one is the Terra Incognita, which is a very good name considering, pardon me, all the different planty-based adjuncts that we've got in it. And 11% herb and spice beer from Bronckhorster Brewing Company in in Gelderland in the Netherlands. Let's get stuck in. Slanje, Skull, Prost. I'm going to say though, in the flavour, it is very, very nice. So this is one of these beers where you say, don't be put off by the aroma. I've had one or two things like this. Like I remember I had those, what were they? From Omnipollo. We had those ice cream Imperial Stout things, and they had this really awful, earthy kind of aroma to them when you first tried them. But they actually tasted really nice when you drank them. It must have been something from the yeast or whatever. But yeah, this beer has a really weird aroma to it, but in the flavour, it's very nice, and it really is a big herbal beast of a thing the further that you go into the aftertaste. So yeah, the aftertaste for this one is all about the adjuncts. So yeah, I think this is definitely a quirky one for sure. So, but yeah, thumbs up to Bronckhorster for this. This is interesting. The other beers they do are like triples and quadruples and stuff like this, so I think we need to try a few of those at some stage as well. But yeah, in terms of the style overall with this beer, I can actually see on first impressions why people would describe this as a, you know, an English barley wine. It does have a wee bit of that vibe about it. It's certainly got a kind of barley wine kind of thing in there too, but a very, just overall, that's a very, very quirky and very unusual beer. And that's like, you know, after 2,800 beer reviews, these are the sort of things that we like reviewing here on Rampant Lion Reviews. But yeah, let's try and break down this beer a little bit then. So all the kind of adjuncty notes, they're forming the backbone of this beer, I think. It's adjuncts, and then it's a bit of brown sugar. So the middle of your palate in this is quite kind of straight shooting in a lot of ways. But the base layer of the beer is a lovely smooth kind of oaky sort of thing. You've got a lovely smooth oaky quality to this beer, which I really enjoy. So yeah. So yeah, lovely kind of oaky smoothness there on the base. It does get a little touch more kind of spicy and things the further you go into the aftertaste. But I think what's happening is a lot of these adjuncts are kind of sitting on top of it. So yeah, it's kind of difficult when you've got so many different adjuncts in it. It's a little bit difficult to kind of pick out exactly what's going on where. But what I will say is that all these adjuncts kind of group together and give you a really kind of spicy thing. So on top of the woodiness there, you start to get a real sort of spiciness out of the beer. I'm guessing that might be the kind of paradise seed in this one that's doing that. But in the middle of the palate, you can really feel a little bit of that more kind of fibrous-y tonka bean type element to it. And you start to, as you move towards the kind of middle, as you move on that middle third of your palate, as you move towards the front of it, you've got a little bit of a, as you move towards the middle of it, you've got a little bit of a more kind of vanilla type note out of it. You get a little bit of that kind of vanilla quality that you get from tonka beans. Tonka beans are beautiful to add into beers, incidentally. They've just got such a strong flavour. I think they're from, if I remember rightly, they're from Central America or South America somewhere rather. But yeah, I've had quite a few tonka bean beers and they're lovely. And I think the tonka bean does kind of sit there the further you go into the aftertaste. But if you push a little bit further back on that middle third of your palate, you can really get the coriander just kind of lingering there in this one. So yeah, I like that about this beer for sure. But yeah, the quality of this beer is just really, it's a very good beer, and it's really interesting. So I can certainly appreciate how this one goes about its business for sure. It's actually, for me, because I'm not really familiar with all of these adjuncts, it's a little bit difficult to pick them out, but I do get a lot. I do get the kind of, I think I'm getting the paradise seed form of the backbone of the beer. I think that's the one that's giving you a little bit of spice. The tonka beans, the sort of more smooth, fibrous-y tonka beans, are sitting there in the middle of the palate, and at the back of that middle third of your tongue, that's where you get the more kind of that's where you get the more sort of, how would we say, the coriander, slightly more kind of spicy notes out of this one. The dried lemon peel, I get a little bit of that. I mean, on the front, as you reach the border region between front and middle third of your palate, and the border region between middle and back third of your palate, yeah, you get a little bit of that kind of lemon peely thing in there. But yeah, the peppery note, I'm not sure. Maybe that's kind of mixing in with the paradise seed in this one. So I can recognise 3 out of the 5 sort of spices in this one, but the other 2, as I say, I'm just not overly familiar with. But the beer actually does come across as really spicy, and it gets spicier and spicier the more that you go into the aftertaste, which is quite interesting. But yeah, in the very centre of your palate though, you've got a little bit of a kind of oily circle, and that's where you get a little bit of a kind of oily brown sugary element to the beer. So yeah. And I will say, the more that you drink of this beer, it really does kind of mellow out and show you a little bit more. So this is definitely a sipper that you should enjoy over a little while. But certainly in the middle of the palate there's a lovely, the brown sugary element is very nice. It's like a big, thick, oily, kind of caramelly note. So I can really appreciate that about this beer as well. The way the brown sugar comes out is certainly very, very interesting. So yeah, and again, the sort of spicy notes build up around the edge of that kind of brown sugary element in the start of the beer. But yeah, as you go on to the back third of your palate, if you move over in there again, you get more of the kind of spicy elements out of it, and you do get a little touch of a kind of a sort of yeasty ester just kind of sitting on top of that. You can feel some of the airy flavours of the yeast on the back third of your palate. So as you start at the back third of your palate, it's not too tall, the flavour isn't too tall, but as you come further forward you can feel it gradually just condensing down. But then as you go into the middle third of your palate, the flavour is quite condensed and quite pushed together in a sense. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things though, I think it's the Tolar and the Sats that are being used as the bittering hop in this one. I think the other ones have probably been used. The Racal and the Dragon have probably been used as the aroma hops in this one, the later edition hops. But yeah, in the back corners of the palate there is a good little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it does develop a little bit of a herbal quality, and as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, it's definitely a little bit more kind of sort of spicy and floral in a sense. Then round the front curve of the palate, it's got a lovely little bit of grassiness and a little bit of zestiness too. So I can really appreciate that about this beer. The green component is quite nice, and in honesty, I'm quite surprised that it's kind of holding up as much as it has, to be honest with you. If this is a barrel aged beer, of course, as well, then yeah, I'm surprised that I'm getting such a kind of strong green component out of this one. But there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. I think hops add a little bit of complexity to big beers like this anyway, so yeah, I can appreciate that. But yeah, on that border region between middle third and front third of your palate, you can feel a little bit of a sort of bready kind of build up there. You get a wee bit of the coriander and a bit of a kind of bread crusty thing, but the base of that front third of your palate is a sort of coriander, smooth, bready element to the beer. So yeah, I can certainly appreciate that about this one. But on the fruity side of things, as I always say, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. For me, this one, the kind of juicy fruity esters in this beer, it's quite hard to kind of place in this one, to be honest with you. So yeah, it's got a good little bit of a citrusy note to it for sure. A wee bit of a kind of citrusy, zesty sort of thing. So maybe the sort of black lemon citrus, if I got the translation right of that sort of black citrusy note, I think that's maybe playing a role here in the start as well. You can get a good bit of alcohol warmth down here out of this beer as well. I'll be sharing this one. Don't think I'll manage the whole thing myself, but yeah, how would you say, the fruity side of this beer is really interesting and again unusual. So there is a sort of citrusy base to the beer, like a kind of sharper lemony kind of citrusy sort of thing, but otherwise it comes across as quite sort of red and fruity in a way. So I think that's, you know, the dragon that's going to give you that. There's a little bit of a kind of underlying of like a fig, sort of red currant-y kind of thing. I do get a wee element of a kind of tropical note out of it. At the back of that front third of your palate, there is a wee bit of a slightly stronger kind of passion fruity note, and I remember having this from Racal before. But yeah, you can feel that the base is sort of quite citrusy at the back, sitting on top of that kind of citrusy layer though. At the back you get a bit of a stronger passion fruit, and as you move further forward you can feel it gradually becomes a little bit more kind of figgy, and then there's a wee bit of a sort of red berry kind of element coming out of this one too. So it's really kind of quirky and quite unusual, this beer, I have to say. A lot of you know, quite a lot of different things pushing their way out of this beer for sure. But yeah, definitely not sure exactly what to make on the fruity side of things with this one, but the fruitiness does add a little bit to the sweetness. So the kind of brown sugar in the middle of the palate here, and the fruitiness later on, they kind of give you the sweeter side of the beer. But overall, this beer does develop. It's got a nice kind of smooth, woody backbone to it, but the adjuncts really, kind of give the beer a good little bit of a spicy thing. So I think it's fair to describe this one as as they say, as a herb and spice beer, but it does have a few kind of barley wine characteristics to it as well. I actually think it would be more of a kind of American barley wine, because the brown sugars are actually quite sweet in this one, and the fruit is quite well rounded and oily in a sense, whereas in the English barley wines, the brown sugars would be a bit more kind of toasty and things, and then the fruits would be a little bit more sort of phenolic in a sense. But the fruits in this one are quite clean and sweet, like I said, but then you've also got a kind of sweeter brown sugary element out of this beer too. So yeah, this is definitely one of the quirkier beers that I've reviewed recently. It reminds me actually of the one that I had from what was it called? The Tears of Atom from Panimonari in the north of Finland. This beer is not a million miles away from that. It's quite close to that one actually. So yeah, there's a kind of random connection for you. But yeah, I think that kind of summarises the flavour of this beer quite well actually. I think I've done my best with this one. This is definitely one of the more unusual ones that I've reviewed, so I feel this is not one of my best reviews, I have to say. But yeah, I like it. It certainly grows on you a little bit the more that you drink it. I didn't like the aroma. I did not like the aroma of this one. But when it opens up a little bit and it shows you what it's all about, then it's quite a nice beer. It is quite an interesting one. I would be curious to try one of the less kind of quirky ones, I think, though, going forward. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel of this beer then, yeah, kind of bottom end of full bodied for me. Carbonation, very, very smooth, almost to the point where it's non-existent. It's a very oily and slick beer, this one. In terms of bitterness, it's hard to distinguish in this because you've got a good bit of spiciness in this and you've also got a bitterness. So, you know, if we combine those together and consider them as bitterness, then maybe this beer's about 40-ish IBUs, maybe 50 at a push. But as I say, I don't know the technicalities of considering spice and IBU together. That's a different thing. But yeah, malt base does have a little bit of sweetness to it. You've got a bit of smoothness underneath, and then as I say, you've got this herbal, spicy kind of thing sitting on top of it. But the fruits are really nice and rounded and oily, and you've got just a wee bit of hoppy bitterness to the beer too. But yeah, I have to say this one is really quirky and interesting. I like how it goes about its business. It certainly didn't smell very nice, but as I say, it has sort of won me round as I've drunk more and more of it. But yeah, this is definitely a kind of sharer beer, I think, rather than one drinking yourself. It's the sort of beer that you buy for the novelty of it, but it certainly does work actually. So yeah, I guess we can leave it at that for this beer then. So yeah, a really quirky one, and thank you again to the guys at the Dutch Beer Collective for giving me this one to review. So yeah, this one was the Terra Incognita, coming in at 11% ABV, a herb and spiced sort of barley wine type thing from Bronckhorster Brewing Company in Gelderland down in the Netherlands. Interesting beer, I have to say. One of the most interesting ones I've had from the Netherlands yet. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Bronckhorster Brewing Company. I'm sure we'll get something again from these guys at some point soon, but I think we'll go for a quadruple or a triple the next time we do it. Something a little bit more kind of conventional, if you like. But yeah, an interesting beer to review. I hope that you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll see about returning to this brewery sometime soon. Slàinte, skull, cheers, prost, and thank you for watching. Catch you soon with another Dutch beer review.